Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is having a wonderful 7-3 day. And because of the special occasion, we're going to be talking 7-3 power strokes today, specifically injectors. Now, with that being said, I do not claim to be a subject matter expert. This is just my experience. Please do your due diligence, do your own research. I always encourage that. And let's dive into it. So, real fast, if you don't know, your 7-3 power stroke has HEUI injection. What does that mean in simple terms? It means you have two oil pumps. You have a low pressure oil pump that takes care of the lubrication of the engine, feeds the oil cooler, goes to the oil filter. It also supplies oil to a secondary pump, which is your high pressure oil pump. On the 7-3 power strokes, it will boost your oil pressure from about 45 to 60 PSI, upwards of over 3,000 PSI, depending on tuning how strong your pump is. Some guys have gotten up there even into the 31, 3200 range and a little bit beyond if you really want to push it. But for a typical 7.3, 3000 PSI is considered really good. Most from the factory run about 27 to 2800 PSI at best, meaning whenever you are commanding as much pressure as you can and that IPR is giving it everything it can to the injectors, you're going to be running around 27, 2800 PSI. Your injectors from the factory run at a 7-to-1 ratio. What does that mean? It means that if your high pressure oil pump is providing 3000 PSI to those injectors and everything else is perfect, at a 7-to-1 ratio, you are getting roughly 21,000 PSI of injection pressure. Now, the math doesn't actually work perfectly like that. There's obviously some fall-offs, equations, things that I am not qualified to talk about, but roughly you're going to get about 20,000 to 21,000 PSI of injection pressure at the injection tip, hypothetically. Now that we've covered that, for most of you guys, you're going to have two types of injectors in your truck unless you've done an engine swap out of an international or you've got something really weird going on. You're going to have single shot injectors in all your OBS trucks, whether that's AA, AB codes. It's going to be a single shot injector. What does that mean? It means you get one shot of a fuel per injection event. Now your super duties are going to have what's called a split shot injector. It sends off a pilot injection event before the primary. Now, when it comes to super duty injectors for the 7.3s, there's a little bit of debate about the size because of the split shot event. Most will tell you that it's around 135 to 140 cc injector. However, there is a downside to these injectors. Split shot injectors are notoriously oil intensive, meaning they require more high pressure oil volume from your high pressure oil pump to be able to maintain that injection pressure. To be able to feed those injectors, it essentially takes a little bit more oil quantity. Single shot injectors are less oil intensive. However, they do tend to be a little bit noisier, a little bit more rattly, and you have more of that industrial, like almost like a dump truck / OBS sound from your diesel injection events. Not for everybody, especially if you got super duty and you want it to be quiet or as quiet as you can get a 7.3 super duty. You're probably going to want to stick with reman AD injectors if you are replacing injectors. AD are the split shot injectors for the 7.3 super duty. Pretty much everything else is going to be a single shot to my knowledge. There might be some really special crazy offs out there, but typically every other injector for a 7.3 or a 444 is going to be a single shot injector. Now, with that being said, there's a lot of different sizes. For you OBS guys, you're typically going to be something around a 90 cc injector. Those are fairly small, and that's what really limits your power on the OBS trucks. It's kind of, with diesels, the amount of fuel that we inject is what allows us to make power. The turbocharger determines how efficient that power is and where we can make the power at. It's that simple. That's why pairing a good turbo with your injectors and having that combination match is so important. If you don't do it, your combination is going to suck and you're going to pay for it. So what do we do about this? Well, it's really simple. If you have an OBS truck, AC encode injectors, which are for your 444s, the internationals, are a great option. You can drop them into your OBS truck without tuning. It's still a single shot injector. It will run perfectly fine. If you want to step up and put them in a super duty, you will need custom tuning. Aaron Arthur, Jelly Belt, gear, they're all good tuners. Going through the Hydras, that's the route to go. If you have a Super Duty and you're going to do a single shot injector, just go with the Hydra. Those three guys know what they're doing. They'll take care of you. I'm not sponsored by any of them. I just have dealt with them. I've talked with them. I know they have good customer support. They've got good reputations in the community. They're not going to screw you over. Now, that's the wonderful thing about the OBSs, because you don't actually have to have custom tuning to take advantage of those AC code injectors. And an AC code is the equivalent to about a 160 injector. That is wonderful. That gives you a ton more power potential. You're not going to run super hot. Now, you will need that tuning to take advantage of the 160s to their full extent. But if you've got an old OBS and your stock injectors are already tired, those 160s are going to be a good bump in power. And once again, not having to have custom tuning to run them in the OBSs is nice. Super Duties, can't overemphasize this. If you're going from a split shot injector to a single shot injector, you're going to need custom tuning to go with that. So just be prepared for that. Now, who needs 160s? Pretty much everybody. I'm going to be honest. If you have a OBS or a Super Duty, a 160 injector is going to be a good bump over stock. If you are a hot shotter, if you are running dump trucks, if you have an F550 you use for your landscaping business, or a 250, or I don't care. If it is a work truck that you do not want it to be smoky, you want to be able to keep it cool, you don't want to have to sit there and constantly stare at an EGT gauge to make sure you're not going over when you're pulling a hill, 160s are the way to go. 160s with like a 40 or 60 horsepower tow tune, it's going to run clean, it's going to run cool, it's going to be the most cost-effective, best injector for you, period. You're not going to have to be sending tune revisions back. It's going to be fairly transmission safe if you're running a 4R100, or if you've got a ZF6 with a moderate or mild or stock clutch in it. You're not going to have a whole lot of issues running that on a small tune. With that being said, a 160 still gives you a huge amount of power potential, especially in an OBS. I mean, I won't say you could double the power potential of your OBS, but you're getting kind of close. You go from a truck that, you know, is maxing out at about 270 wheel horsepower, really pushing those injectors, to a truck that could easily make 340, 350 horsepower and still be well within what those injectors can handle. Hands down, a great injector for you work guys. And you're not going to have to send revisions back trying to get your tune perfect or anything like that, because it's going to run really well. Once again, for you Super Duty guys, it's going to be a little bit louder. You're going to have a little bit more injector cackle. You may or may not like it. It's not terrible. I'm going to be honest with you. It does sound different, but it's not as ridiculously loud as some people make it seem. Personally, I like it. It sounds like an International to me. It sounds like a 444, which is what I'm used to being around and working with. And I don't mind it. And honestly, with a stock airbox and a muffler on it, it's really not terrible at all. It does sound a little bit louder in the inside and when you're walking around the cab, but louder isn't exactly the best term. I would just say it sounds different. So, with that being said, let's talk about the next size up. Really common, 175 30s, 180 30s. There's no difference between the two. Sometimes it's just the way that they're measuring them. Sometimes, even if it is a true 5cc difference, it doesn't matter. 5cc's over 1,000 injection events is nothing. It's not going to be enough that you're ever going to notice it in a typical truck. So when would I recommend a 175 30 or a 180 30? Very simple. If you have a truck that you still use a lot for work, but it's more of a toy, you don't mind sending back revisions, because I did with mine, and I had very good help with that, but it wasn't perfect out the gate. The advantage to the 175 30s or the 180 30s, you have a little bit bigger injection tip. So when we talk about 7.3 injectors, the first number we're talking about cc's over 1,000 injection vents. The second number is going to be the nozzle size. So with a 30% over nozzle, you have the ability to get more fuel out of the injector quicker. This is awesome. It allows us to basically run a narrower pulse width. Some people claim that by going to a 175 30 or a 180 30, you can get a little bit more responsiveness and torque. Now, that sounds really appealing for some of you guys that are towing heavy, but once again, there are some drop-offs. Number one, it may be a little smoky on startup. you may have a little bit more coal out the exhaust when accelerating or towing, especially if you're out of boost. The biggest thing I will say about it is I would still go with that 160 or an AC code, because they're readily available across the country. You can easily get one if you're on the road and the injectors fail and you just have to replace that one injector. It's going to be a lot easier for you. And once again, when you're towing heavy, you're going to be limited to, at best, if you're in a Super Duty with an intercore and OBS that's been heavily modified, probably about 300 to 325 wheel horsepower is all you're going to be able to tow at anyway. So you're never going to really be able to take advantage of what that 180/30 is going to be able to offer. Power potential is much higher. Yes, you might be able to make upwards of 400 horsepower with one, but you're still not going to be able to use that while towing. And the trade-offs, number one, they're more expensive because you're going to a stage 1.5 or 2.0 injector versus a stage 1 or 0 or however they want to rate it on their scales. But once again, you're going to be a little bit warmer. You're going to be, especially on the EGTs, you're going to be a little bit more smoky. And not many places are going to have a 175 or 180/30 injector on the shelf. You might be able to order one online or have it overnighted, but once again, that's a lot different than just walking into an international dealership and they might have it in stock or have it for you the next morning. So if it's a truck you rely on and you're absolutely using it for work and that's all you ever do and dependability is the number one priority, 160 AC code injectors, I cannot stress that enough. If it's more of a toy and something you don't depend on and you have backups or something else you could do, 175/30s and 180/30s. So going up from that, we're going to start talking about things like the we'll say 200s to 230 injectors in a 30 or 80% nozzle. Now at this point in time, you pretty much have a play toy, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean that that truck can't tow, because you could turn back those injectors. I just would not recommend them for guys that are using them for everyday work. And typically at this point, you're gonna probably be stepping up to something like a stage 2 turbo. KC stage 2 is a great option for this injector combo. It'll give you plenty of power, and you have now the power potential to make upwards of 500 or even past 500 horsepower with the proper setup, supporting mods, and turbo to support that. You can probably still get away with the stage 1. You're just not going to be able to hit that peak power and still be able to keep it as cool and wide open throttle and stuff like that. Awesome injectors, especially if, once again, if it's more of a play toy, it's a great combo. Now, when you start getting into stuff like hybrid injectors, now your injection ratio changes. You go from a 7-to-1 to like a 5-to-1 injection ratio. That also means that you require a lot less high pressure oil to be able to make those injection events. This is really good for you guys that do not want to upgrade your high pressure oil pump. Past that, you're getting into some really crazy stuff. You know, you can go all the way up to 400 and just ridiculous sizes on not only the volume, but also the injector tip. When you're starting to get into like anything over really an 80 over injection tip is going to be a very, very aggressive injector. Those are more for the serious guys that are doing competition pulling, drag racing, and you know what you're getting into and you're ready to drop a full built bottom end on the trucks. Typically valve springs on 7.3s are pretty reliable, even though they're getting up there in age, till about 40 PSI. Once you're making more than that, and when you're running an injector that's out there past the stage 3, you're into that category. You're gonna need extensive internal mods, not just in the top end, but also in the bottom end to keep it together. And if you're doing that, you know what injector you need. I'm not gonna sit here and try to make recommendations because you probably already know what you're doing, or you need to be doing extensive research to figure that out, because there's no YouTuber that's gonna be able to come on here and give you the proper accommodation for that. One other thing we gotta talk about, because this video is getting long and I really wish they would get out here with the groceries because it's getting hot. The HPO pumps in the 7.3s vary between generations. Not just generations, but there was, I want to say, 3 different versions of it. I want to say there was a 15 degree, a 17 degree, and it might have been a 17.5 or something that ended up in the Super Duties. The Super Duty high pressure oil pump is the best factory pump. It had a little bit more oil volume and was able to maintain pressure a little bit better. I think the 94 and 95s had the smallest one, and then they changed it, and that pump ran, I think, from 96 to 99 or early 99. Once again, do some research. These trucks live and die by high pressure oil and your fuel system. If you can't maintain fuel pressure and you cannot maintain high pressure oil pump, it doesn't matter what injectors and turbos you have in it. So that's why I always recommend some sort of monitoring, being able to actually tell what your system is doing. Because if you cannot maintain IPC, and this applies to the 6.0s too, it won't matter. It's just not going to work. When it comes to aftermarket high pressure oil pumps, I personally run an Adrenaline. It works really well. Good customer service with them. CNC has their stage 1 and stage 2, also really popular. And I have installed T500s in customers' trucks. Did a landscaper's OBS. The pump was done to begin with and actually had pushed the plate off the back and ate itself. We did a T500 on it because he was like budget oriented, wanted just to get it right, and it worked really well. So that's another option for you guys that are only looking to spend like $500. Personally, I like the Adrenaline, but I hear the CNC stage 2 is also very good, and the CNC stage 1 I think is supposed to be a little bit better than the T500, and the T500 is supposed to be almost like a superduty plus pump. It's a little bit better than stock, but not a whole lot, but you might not need it if you're just running a stock truck. So if you have any questions, concerns, opinions, leave them in the comments. Thank you for sticking with me for this long video. Hope everyone has a wonderful 4th of July. Be safe out there. Don't do anything stupid. Be nice to your neighbors, especially during the 4th of July, because everybody's having a good time. And as always, guys, all the way.